If you're interviewing for data analytics roles or trying to interview for data analytics roles, you cannot miss this video. Today, we're talking all about the data analytics interview process and how it's really just one big funnel. Understanding each part of the funnel is going to help you move to the next step and eventually get to that offer stage at the very end. I'm Jess Ramos, and I'm the founder of Big Data Energy. I make data and tech content here on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, my newsletter, anywhere you are, I will find you with my data and tech content. And this is my cat Ozuna. He also loves filming YouTube and hops in my lap every time I go to film a video. The first step of the data analytics job search funnel is your resume. I know there is so much content out there about resumes and there are so many opinions, but the most important thing is that your resume needs to look like the role you are targeting. No matter what your background is, your resume going for a data analytics role needs to make you look like a data analyst. And whether you're coming from a different corporate job like marketing or finance or a completely unrelated job like teaching or nursing, your resume needs to make you look like a data analyst. Because if a recruiter picks up your resume and they're like, this person looks like a nurse or this person looks like a marketing assistant, they're not going to even interview you for a data analytics role because at the end of the day, they want to hire a data analyst. And your resume needs to sell you as that so you get more interviews. So how can you do that? First and foremost, you need to highlight all of your relevant skills and projects at the top of your resume. So cut out all of your unrelated skills that have nothing to do with a typical data analyst role. And then you need to highlight all of your data analytics skills. So that can be your technical skills like SQL, Power BI, Tableau, Python, Excel, any tool or coding language that is used for data analysis, put it there. You can also highlight a few soft skills as well, but you don't really need to put a ton of those on your resume because your soft skills should come out during your interviews. Then the next thing you're going to do is under the experience section, you're going to make all of your bullet points look like data analytics experience. Stay with me for a sec. So basically, if you're a teacher, instead of saying, I managed 20 crazy screaming kids, you're going to say, I improved test scores by 15% by tracking KPIs over time and making blah, blah, blah decisions. So basically, you're going to take all of your experience in your previous role and you're going to talk about the impact it had and how you tracked data, analyzed data, and made decisions off of data. And I know that can be a stretch for a lot of roles depending on what role you're coming from, but that's going to take you a lot further than just saying straight up, I was a teacher, I was a nurse. And by the way, I swear I'm not picking on teachers and nurses. I just see a lot of people from education and healthcare going into data analytics. But no matter what your role is, you need to make sure that you rewrite all of your past experience as data analytics experience and really highlight those transferable skills you have. So that's step one, your resume. If your resume sucks, you will not move past to any further stages. This is the end of the road for you. By the way, I'll put my tech resume template that I highly recommend down below and you can grab it and fill it out for yourself. The second stage of the data analytics job search funnel is applications. And this is when you can finally play a heavy role in the interview process. So if you're applying for all these jobs and you're not getting any callbacks, that means you probably need to go back to your resume or your application strategy and figure out why you're not getting any interviews or callbacks. And why are applications important? So basically, if you're applying for a bunch of jobs and you're just cold applying and doing nothing, maybe you're just hitting easy apply on LinkedIn. I know we're all guilty of that and getting zero results. You need to be doing something different, especially in this market. There's so much competition out there. Easy apply is not going to cut it. Cold applying and doing nothing, not going to cut it, even if you have an amazing resume. So to really improve the applications part of the process, you need to be connecting with people, networking, sending messages on LinkedIn. I'll put an example here of how you can reach out to hiring managers and technical recruiters after you apply for a data analytics position. And yes, I know this can be a really tedious process, but you really should be reaching out to technical recruiters and hiring managers after every single application that you really care about. So if it's a job or a company that's a super good fit and you really want the position, you need to reach out to people on LinkedIn. The faster you can get human contact about your application, the faster you can get shortlisted and interviewed. Because at the end of the day, all people are people, even hiring managers and recruiters. And let's face it, we all want easy. Hiring managers and recruiters want easy. If you're a qualified candidate and you reach out and say, hey, I'm interested, they're probably going to interview you because that's so easy for them. They don't want to have to read hundreds and millions of resumes and sift through thousands of applicants. So be proactive, be eager, and be in their LinkedIn messages. Okay, once you have an amazing resume and you're really just playing the application game and making those connections, you're gonna get your first interview. And again, if you're not getting any interviews, you need to go back to the resume and application strategy portion. Usually, the first interview in the interview process is going to be a recruiter call. A recruiter is someone who sources out candidates and decides if they're a good fit based on what the hiring manager is looking for. So they're going to be assessing your skills and your experience, along with a few boring admin stuff like, do you live in the right state? Do you need a visa? Are you actually someone they can hire based on the paperwork and HR stuff? And then, of course, they're going to ask you some juicy questions about salary expectations. And never say a number here. I'm going to make a completely different video on this, but do not ever give them a number. Flip the question back on them. Make them tell you their number. And again, recruiters usually aren't very technical people. They just want to know if you're a good fit or not. So make sure you sound like a good fit. If they ask you a question about a technical skill, don't say you don't know. Try to talk about a transferable skill you have, because at the end of the day, you just want them to pass you and go on to the next level. You have to fight for your life in these. And if you leave any sort of doubt in their mind that you don't know what you're talking about or you don't have the right experience, they're going to cut you right then and there. The phone call is going to be over. After they assess your skills and the boring HR stuff that they have to ask, then they're going to ask if you have any questions. And don't just say, no thanks, you answered them all. That's boring. It also makes you seem unprepared, unresearched, uninterested, and you don't want to seem that way. So make sure you always do your research ahead of time about the company, about the team, any recent launches, any initiatives, and then you can ask specific questions to the recruiter. And a lot of times the recruiter is not going to know the super nitty-gritty details of the team. You'll have to ask those questions to the hiring manager, but you can at least ask questions to the recruiter about the company culture, recent launches, recent challenges the company has faced. Ask really interesting questions and show that you care about the role. And finally, at the very end, you also need to ask the recruiter when you can expect to hear back by, because you don't want to just be sitting there for weeks and get ghosted. Say, when can I expect to hear back about this position? I'm super excited about the role. And then always follow up the next day after the interview. Just keep the pressure on them, put your foot on the gas, and put some pressure on them to move you forward. And a lot of times they will if you're qualified. After you move on from the recruiter round, that's when you're going to go meet the hiring manager. And in my opinion, this is the most important interview in the entire process, because if the hiring manager doesn't like you or doesn't think you're a good fit, you're definitely not going to move on, because this would be your future manager. So they want to obviously hire someone that they like and that they think is well qualified to do well in the role. So they're going to ask you a lot of questions about your experience and specifics about your projects. So be ready to talk about anything in your portfolio and on your resume. They might actually ask hey, walk me through a project you're proud of. And then you have to walk through the entire process of how you had a business problem, how you solved the problem, what were the results and the impact of your work. So just be ready to talk about specifics about your past experience and projects. And again, if they ask you something that you don't know, don't just say that you don't know. Make sure you come up with a transferable skill or some sort of relevant experience that can help you learn that new skill. At the end of the day, you want to make sure the hiring manager has zero doubts about hiring you. And a lot of times it just comes down to confidence. You have to be confident. Even if they ask you something that you don't know, leave them with the feeling that you can easily learn it and be an asset on their team. If you seem very unconfident and full of imposter syndrome, they're going to sense that and they're going to have doubts about you as well. Okay, once you get past the hiring manager, the next step is, in my opinion, the most difficult and most stressful part of the process, and that is the technical assessment. The technical assessment can happen in a bunch of different ways, in a bunch of different steps, depending on the company. But for the most part, you're either going to have a live coding interview or a take-home assignment. Pick your poison. So a live coding interview is where you're going to hop on a Zoom call with somebody, maybe the hiring manager, maybe someone on the team, and you're going to have to solve coding problems live. For data analyst roles, it's almost always SQL. Maybe you'll see Python in a more senior level role, but more times than not, it's SQL. And there's a lot of really common SQL interview problems. I'll make a different video about that, but you need to be able to not only solve the problems and do it live while nervous while somebody's watching you, but you also need to be able to ask the right questions and communicate and collaborate, because those are things that they're looking for too, not just the right answer. The other type of technical assessment you might see is a take-home assignment. A lot of times companies will give you anywhere between like 2 days and a week to do a take-home assignment, and they'll usually give you like some anonymized data from the company and say, here's the business problem, or here's the questions, here's what we want you to do. Most of the time, they'll say use whatever tool or system you're comfortable with, but a lot of times they'll say you have to do this in SQL or you have to do it in this environment. So you're basically doing homework. Takes you right back to school, doesn't it? So you're basically doing a homework assignment for them and then turning it into a presentation, which you're going to present to the team at the next round of the interview process. And again, for a take-home assignment, they're looking to see if you have the right technical skills, but also if you're able to communicate them well. And then depending on your work, they'll either bring you to the next round or not. And if you don't pass this round, it usually means that you need to work on your technical skills. So get better at coding, get better at communicating your code, or sometimes maybe it just means that someone else was a little bit better than you, and that happens. And the next step of the interview process is some sort of panel interview usually, which means you're either interviewing in front of a group of people or you're doing a bunch of small interviews with different people. It really depends on the company. But a lot of times, if you did a take-home assignment during the technical portion of the interview, you're probably going to be presenting it to the entire team, which is a little scary, to be honest. But it builds character and it gets you better at presenting data and insights and communicating clearly. And then after this, you might meet with other stakeholders, like a product stakeholder, a finance stakeholder, a leadership person, like vice president of engineering or something like that. It really just depends on the company, but usually it's people that analytics works with closely, and they just want to make sure that, you're able to work cross-functionally and, all that business vocabulary stuff. And once you survive the panel portion, hopefully, this is considered like the final round, then it is time to get an offer. If you get through all of these steps and get cut and don't get an offer, honestly, I'm really sorry. That sucks. A lot of times it just comes down to there being multiple good candidates. But if you're lucky enough to get through, it's time to get an offer. And if you are lucky enough to get an offer, my biggest advice is to say, thank you and be super excited when they call you about it, but do not verbally accept the offer. Don't say, oh my gosh, I can't wait to start. Yes, I'm in. Because once you verbally accept it, your negotiation is over. You've already committed to it. So it's going to be really hard to negotiate after that. You have to kind of hold your cards close to your chest and get ready to negotiate. So they call and they say, here's your offer. It's yada, yada, yada. You're going to say, oh my gosh, thank you so much for the offer. I'm super excited to be receiving this offer. I look forward to seeing more in writing. Express your gratitude, express your excitement, and express wanting to see it in writing. And then you're going to get it in writing, and then boom, negotiate. Always negotiate. And that is the entire data analytics job searching funnel. We have the resume, the applications, the recruiter call, the hiring manager, the technical assessment, the panel interview, and the offer. It is a long process, especially in this market, but understanding where you keep getting cut in the interview process is really important because it helps you change and get better and start moving along to the later stages. And then eventually you get an offer. So if you're getting stuck at one part of the interview process, try to think why. What can you do better to start passing that part of the interview process? If you're missing all the technical stuff, work on your technical skills. Work on communicating your insights. If you're not getting past the hiring manager, work on communicating your experience, walking through projects. And if you're not getting any interviews, literally just keep working on your skills, keep networking, work on your resume, make yourself look like a juicier candidate. None of this is easy, but I promise it's all worth it once you get to that offer stage. I'm Jess Ramos. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more, and I'll see you later. Bye.